Welcome to the Rylee June Show. I am your host, Rylee June, intuition master coach and spiritual activator. This podcast is here to support you on your growth and ascension journey, for those new to learning about their energy and for light leaders to set a standard in their work and practices within the industry. Running a multi-six-figure business as a light leader comes with great responsibility. And as I expand my work into the corners of the globe to help others reconnect with who they truly are, just know your time spent here with me is held sacredly. And for light leaders, it's time to show up. We have a massive mission to raise the awareness of human consciousness in our globe. So let's get to work. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode. I have a very special guest, Sara Norris, on today that I'm going to be sharing with you. I am so excited for you to tune in to this conversation that we had. We literally cover all things from the spiritual awakening to support systems to the power of therapy to alien encounters and inner child healing. Like, this conversation is so powerful, so profound. You are going to be so enthralled with all the things that we talk about. I really, truly cannot wait for you to tune into this. But before you do, I want to remind you that we are only 3 weeks out, 3 or 4 weeks out, very, very shortly, coming upon the time for the enrollment for the Align and Ascend Mastermind. So if you are a spiritual entrepreneur who is looking to make great waves and strides in 2022, the Align and Ascend Mastermind is not only going to help you and support you with the masculine energy of starting your business, getting everything in place to not only navigate the startup structure appropriately and properly, but also in tuning into a higher level of money mindset and management to support you in truly being able to scale into those 4, 5, 6-figure experiences that you desire to have. It is one thing to say, I want to make 5 figures a month, 6 figures a year. It's another thing to be able to understand how to actually sustainably be able to achieve those experiences. And then equally dance in the realm of the feminine energy in tapping into deeper levels of understanding, energy, intuition development, and reading your clients' auras. So this is what we're going to be doing and going in depth in this next round, which starts February 2nd. I am only opening enrollment for 1 week, and there is only 20 spots available. So it's going to be a first come, first serve basis. And those who are on the wait list not only get 24-hour access to be able to join before everyone else, but you're also going to be able to receive a $1,000 discount for that very first 24 hours. So if you are someone who has been on the hamster wheel for a year or two now and you want to have profitable, expansive experiences within not only the revenue that you take in, but the impact that you give out, or you're someone who is just starting, just ready to show up in this world and offer a healing service, and you want to curate and understand how to curate powerful, impactful experiences for people that stand out in this world in 2022, you are not going to want to miss out on being in this space. And speaking to the investment portion first and foremost, sometimes that is the scariest, hardest thing to believe in trusting that you are going to get a return on your investment. And I want to just first start with, we are all there. We all meet that point, no matter what it is that the investment is, whether you're investing $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 into a program. When you are investing in yourself, not only do you get to understand that it is a tax write-off, a portion of it is a write-off for business purposes, but also you have to ask yourself, where do you truly want to be? How far are you willing to go, and what are you going to do to get those results? Having spent 2 years prior to finally just taking the money and investing in the coach, I spent countless hours trying to figure out how to do it myself. And it took me 2 years to be able to create the income that I wanted. And in hiring the coaches, it took me less than a year to double what I was making trying to do it on my own. So, if you truly have a goal, a place that you desire to go, not only in a personal sense for development and income, but also in the impact you want to make in this world, do yourself a favor and start with investing in yourself, because that means you're investing in your clients, you're investing in your future, and it's only going to help you to expedite the process and give you the community experience of like-minded driven women who are equally showing up for this work in all the scarcities and working through that stuff for themselves too. So get your butt on the wait list, and I cannot wait to see you in January and in February when we get started in the next round of the Align and Ascend Mastermind. You can go and check out the testimonies of the women who have been in the rounds before. They're all listed on the page there for you. And there's going to be more updated over this month, as well as I have the ones from this previous round roll in for you to be able to tune into as well. From Krista, Kirsta, I don't know why I'm changing her name. From Kirsta, who came into a one-on-one coaching program with me, who then upgraded to the mastermind. She started with wanting just to develop her energy and her gifts for herself and heal herself, to then learning and realizing once we got into the intuitive work, the energy development, that she was so capable and her soul was lit up with fire, that within this 4-month container, she has not only showed up with an offer in her sound bath healing, but she has been hosting group in-person sessions and online sessions, supporting her family, making money, and helping people in a powerful way. And Kirsta's story is one of many. So go and check out the testimonies. I cannot wait to support you in this space. And it is just truly going to rock your world and set your life on fire in the best of ways. All right, I'm going to turn this over to our interview with Sara, and I hope you guys enjoy this as much as we did. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another session. I am so excited to have Sara Norris with us today. We are going to be talking about the journey of your spiritual awakening. And Sara, I am so excited for you to share your story with everyone. But I'd love for you to first take a moment just to introduce yourself, and who are you, and what's one thing you're grateful for today?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, today, actually, I am leaving on a trip to Sedona. So I am really grateful to be getting out of my little bubble and going to, see some place that's really beautiful. But so who I am, I guess, is getting more and more complex every time I get asked this question, because, as you go through this spiritual awakening, you're discovering all these little nuances to yourself and your soul that you just had no idea even existed. And all of a sudden you're this really complex being that, it's like, how do you describe that? But I guess the way that I'm showing up in the world right now is as I'm stepping into my role kind of as a spiritual teacher. As an intuitive and as an inner child healing guide for people who are just starting out on this journey.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So let's get right into it, because the work that you are stepping into is really so profound and so powerful in how it influences positive changes and ultimately healing within people. And so I'd love for you to share a bit about, what was that moment in your life where you started to have those realizations that you maybe not so much in the beginning, or unless this is true, but where did you start to have those experiences where you started to realize that you needed to start your healing journey, or it was a non-negotiable? So the part where I was like, oh, maybe you didn't necessarily feel worthy of it, but we can dive more into that in a moment. But yeah, where did you start? What was that turning point for you?
Yeah, well, I, like a lot of people who were kind of forced into a healing journey, I felt like I really had no choice.
Yeah.
It was really just kind of thrust upon me. And I was like, okay, here we go. This is either I can lean into this or I can resist it. And I can continue to live out these same cycles in my life over and over again. But I think the exact turning point was, being in a relationship that was extremely difficult with somebody who, I don't want to diagnose anybody, but either was a narcissist or had some very serious narcissistic tendencies. And through this relationship, I was kind of shown a very clear mirror of myself, and the types of people and situations that I had been attracting into my life for years and years and years, without realizing that the source of all these things that were happening in my life was ultimately me. I had felt like a victim of all of these things for so long, that why are these things happening to me? Why can't I find a partner who is supportive and loving? Why does my job never work out? It's always me searching for the source of where this was all coming from, and feeling like life was just kind of happening to me. And this relationship, many things were shown to me, as far as my codependency, and especially in relationships, but just in life in general, of needing somebody else to really validate me and show me that I was worthy of love, and show me that I was a valuable person, without finding that source of love inside of myself. I was constantly seeking outside, and having these relationships with partners who constantly made me earn their love. It was this withholding so that I would chase. And I was attracting these partners so often that I was like, okay, something's got to be up here. It's got to be something. So at the end of this relationship, I actually had a very synchronistic experience where I was just, on YouTube one day scrolling through some stuff, and a random tarot reader popped up. And this wasn't something that I normally would watch on YouTube at the time. And through her message, it was a general reading, of course, but she said very clearly, like, to whoever this message is for, you need to get out. And I just heard that so clearly. It was just like chills of, she is talking to me. That is my sign. I got to get out. And when that happened, a series of events suddenly aligned, where it was like, I had no other choice but to pack my stuff up and leave the situation that I was in. And that's when I decided, it's a good idea to find a therapist. It's a good idea to really start digging deep of why now I'm almost 40 years old and these cycles are not resolving themselves. I have to figure out what's going on. So that led me to therapy, and that kind of sparked the whole awakening process in me.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And I want to acknowledge you for showing up and sharing your story, because it is vulnerable. Like, it's your experience, and there's so much emotion rooted behind anything when someone has to, you're in something that's painful and you have to get up and not associate leaving with pain, because that's the other big part of it, right? So the only reason people stay where they are is because they associate it being more painful to get to another place or to leave the situation. And so for you to have that awareness where it was this calling, I like to call them. It's like can't explain it, and it's like a non-negotiable, and you're all of a sudden just doing things, you're out of your body, and it's like all of a sudden you're over here. Like, how the hell did I get here?
Yes. And that's what it felt like. I felt like I was just being drawn and guided so strongly, and I just was in a position where I didn't know what else to do. And so I just followed that with my whole heart, and just trusted that I was being led and out of this horrible situation and into something that was going to be better.
Yeah. What was one of those things that really helped you to, even on the hardest days, really find some form of faith and belief that this was going to work out for the better?
I would say synchronicities. I kept having all of these very synchronistic things happen that was just supporting me all along the way. And what I've noticed over the past year is a pattern of me being able to attract in teachers and mentors that I need to hear messages from at exactly the right time. So in the beginning, it was that woman on YouTube. I just heard her message. And at the time, I was going through a lot of really serious health issues that all kind of stemmed back to my body having a physical response to the amount of stress that I was under. But I was seeing this woman who was doing these foot detoxes, just trying to detox my system, figure out what was going on. And she was also a student of Jewish mysticism.
Oh, interesting.
And she was very, very interesting, but she pointed out several things to me that I had never thought of, that all kind of came to be truth. And whenever I had this, realization of all of what was going on. So it's like that teacher led to another teacher, led to another teacher. And it has been a succession of these beautiful women coming into my life and really mentoring me and showing me that I was strong enough to do this, and that this was me being called into something bigger.
Wow, that's really, really beautiful. And I love that it was something small. It was like looking for the evidence of why this was actually going to work, because that's one of the biggest things that people are usually challenged with is like, if I don't trust myself and I don't have a sense of faith and I don't know how this is going to work out and I'm in so much pain, how do I trust myself and have faith and not be associating this with pain? And we tend to look for that. Okay, well, if I don't have it, how am I supposed to have it? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you mention, following the synchronicities, it's like you weren't trying to be, though in some way we always are. We're like, okay, I just want to trust this. I'm trusting this, I have faith. I'm trusting this, I have faith. I'm like telling myself this and I don't believe it, but I'm doing it anyways. But the most important thing is that you look for the tangible little things, the 1 degree shifts that were leading you to somewhere bigger. And that's really beautiful to share, because for so many people, like yesterday was the day that they were slapped in the face with like, holy shit, I got to fix something here. Like it's starting to question. Maybe it's some of the things in the world. Maybe it's their partner. Maybe it's their finances. Maybe it's their health. Maybe it's a plethora of other things. Right. And so for people who are just coming into that activation, stories like yours are timeless, because we have millennia of periods of time where people didn't have access to the things that we do today, and the support, ultimately the support, right? The internet, we can find these people from YouTube just because, from an Instagram scroll. And I think what's really powerful about your story is that it was the curiosity that led you the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where faith and trust maybe didn't quite exist. It was the curiosity. And so for you, I'm curious, where do you now start to see yourself evolving? What are some paths or plans or even ideas that have opened up for you because of you following these paths and doing this inner work?
Well, what I'm coming to realize as I feel like I'm starting to put together all of these smaller pieces that have been leading up to the bigger picture. And now it's all starting to kind of, where it was fuzzy before, it's all starting to come into focus the further and further I go down this path. And what I'm seeing for myself, and now as I realize it, it all seems so obvious, because it's like now I'm realizing it's like, aha, this was what it was the whole time. And I've just been guided through all of these challenges to get me to this point. But what I'm seeing myself evolve into is really a spiritual teacher. Ultimately, but I do want to focus a lot on the inner child healing as a starting place for a lot of people, because for me, when I started seeing that therapist, she really took me deep into the inner child journey. And that was something I had never heard of whenever I started speaking with her. But it was ultimately the catalyst for so much change for me. And she was actually the person who originally prompted me to look further into doing that as a teacher, because I became so passionate about that part of my journey. I read the books and I did all the exercises and I journaled and I did the meditations and I was like hardcore on it. And it was so, I was like determined, like I am going to go deep and figure this out once and for all. So being able to guide other women through that process, I think is really where my heart is right now, because I realized, like, as I healed that little inner child inside of me, I was able to open up to so many more things whenever I was able to just go within and support myself. And stop looking outside of myself for so much validation and for outside support. Because, with the inner child healing journey, I was tapping into parts of myself that I didn't even know existed and that were in a lot of pain. And it all kind of made things make so much more sense. Of, like I said before, I was in a very victim mentality, space of victim mentality for a long time, and always wondering, like, why is this happening to me? But when I was able to go back and talk with my inner child and really make that connection to the original events that created the beliefs in my subconscious that continued to attract these people and situations into my life, that was a major aha moment for me, because I was able to pinpoint the original, the origin of all of this and go in and heal that. So I want to lead women through inner child healing, but as a spiritual teacher, what I'm also finding is I've done so much studying over the past year, and reading books and listening to different people. And there's so much information out there. But what I kept questioning in myself was, okay, people are using these words like quantum or like embodiment or, these very like buzzwords, for lack of a better term, to call them. But it's like, what does that mean? And for somebody who is just starting out on this spiritual journey, it can be really confusing because you can get so lost in the jargon of it and not knowing how to define these things for yourself.
Yes.
So I've learned that one of my roles on this planet is to go first. Go through the whole thing, and then figure out how to teach other people how to do it.
Amen, sister.
So I want to simplify all of this woo-woo spiritual stuff that people talk about that seems so out there and esoteric and intangible, in the words that they use. And I really want to help people define what that means for them and define their own path through that journey, rather than just kind of following what everybody else is doing. Because it is also individual. But I think just in helping people be able to define that is where I want to start, in the very basics of like, okay, this is what it means to meditate. This is what it means to connect with your guides, in a very simple, just spell it out kind of way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love, I can feel the release come up. I love everything, like every single thing that you just said, because that was one of my biggest problems for me when I started was, okay, you get into energy. So typically the first things that you start hearing about is healing and intuition. So it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Where do I go? Who do I talk to now? Because this is like so foreign to me. It's like trying to speak another language. And then you see all the fancy, flashy spiritual teachers with the $1 million businesses. And that's the biggest highlight, and the beautiful graphics and the support teams. And you're like, okay, what the F does that mean? Like, you made $1 million by helping people heal. Okay. So, well, what's that first part? Like, where do I heal? What does that mean? Oh, quantum energy. Oh, expansion. It's like, okay, well, what the heck does that mean? And so when you said that, I was like, yes, that's why I literally started doing what I was doing, because I went into this space and I'm hearing about quantum healing and energy and meditation. And these words were never thrown around in my house growing up. And now I'm finding people who are saying you need to meditate for an hour. And I'm like, I got 2 kids. Like, there's no way I'm meditating for an hour. Like, good luck. Oh, does this mean that I can't heal then? Like, what? Oh my gosh. And then you get into this mind drama of, well, if I'm not doing it this way, I'm not doing it right. And so when you were talking about like helping people to define it for themselves, there is such a marketing aspect to energy teachers and healers that is so beautiful and relevant. But for the client who's coming in that teacher wants to support, it's very disheartening, because, or I wouldn't say disheartening, it's very confusing, like you said, because it's like, where do I start? Where do I go? What's like step 1, day 1, first word kind of thing. And so I really love that you have that passion, because even equally in doing the inner child work, it is going day 1, step 1, root chakra, right? Get into the identity that makes up the personality and characteristic traits of who you are today. And that's often so overlooked because of the marketing glamour of quantum energy and make millions of dollars. And those are such beautiful things. I'm not discrediting it, but to someone who's, in that abusive relationship, or has a terrible mindset and experience with money, or, started to see other people in their lives excel through healing, and they're like, well, what do I do? What do I got to do? Like, I want to do this too. It can feel very hard. And almost to then, like we talked about, associating pain with the experience of going through it, because now it's just too confusing. So I really love that you have that passion, because it is very much where a lot of people are right now in their healing journey. Unless you are in that position to be that teacher, right? You've spent the last 5 to 10 years going through that healing. So for people who are just going in it, it really does come down to that inner child work that you're stepping up into offering, because that's like the access point to everything else. That's access
It
point to the
is.
quantum stuff.
Right? It really is. It's really a great place to start. And the other thing is, as I was going through this in the beginning, especially, not understanding what people meant when they said like getting downloads or, these terms that they use. And I'm not finding teachers who were on my level because they were so far into their journey that I wanted to be there, but I just couldn't connect with them on that level yet. And then also feeling like, okay, well, is there something wrong with me? Am I doing it wrong? I'm not getting downloads. What's a download? Like, what is that? What does that feel like? What does that look like? But it seemed to come so easily for all these people who were talking about it. So it starts to it gets you back into those wounds sometimes of like feeling unworthy or not good enough, of like, okay, well, now I'm trying to heal, but now I can't even do that. Right. Like, so being able to just really break it down for people in the beginning, just to give them something to start sinking their teeth into a little at a time, I think is where I really want to begin.
I love that. That's, you are without a doubt going to help a lot of people change their lives with that.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. I'd love to hear from you, having gone through your healing journey. And arguably our healing journeys are never complete. It's an ever evolving thing. It's just the higher you go, the more to process, it just becomes less impact or negatively influenced on our bodies. But what is your experience with feeling or dancing with the energy of worthiness now?
Now I come from a space of realizing that I am more powerful as a person, as a soul, than I ever imagined that I was. And coming from a place of self-love and having this innate worthiness just because I exist. And it took a long time to get there. I'm not going to say that was an easy process at all. And it's still something that I work on. You get triggered and you're like, oh gosh, I thought I fixed that. I thought I already worked through all this. And then it comes up again and you have to do the work again. It is, like you said, it is an ongoing process. But now I'm at a point where I give myself some grace. Because I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And no matter how many healers or teachers look like they're doing it perfectly, you're just not seeing what's actually happening in the background. It is work that is ongoing. So, giving myself some grace of not being perfect. And that was actually really proven to me this last week. I said something that was in my mind, not a big deal, but I guess kind of thoughtless to a friend of mine. And it really upset him. And I thought, I really kind of beat myself up about it for a couple of days. It's like, I know better than this. Like, I've done this work. Why would I say that to somebody? And having to go back and like very consciously, apologize to this person and then forgive myself for saying something thoughtless, but I just had this point where I had to step back for a minute and say, okay, well, I've done this work, but clearly there's still something there that, that I need to work on. So, just not beating yourself up when you make a mistake and realizing, okay, well, now I have to take a step back and reflect a little bit. And I am worthy of this healing. I am worthy of this love. I love myself. Spirit loves me, and not just making it harder than it needs to be. Yeah.
What are that's really beautiful. And I love your willingness to not only be accountable to the mirrors that are shown to you, but also your openness, or I should say transparency, and saying like, hey, I'm on this journey. I've gotten to this point, but I'm still not perfect. Like, and you're not going to be, and equally myself. Right. So I also recently had a very big conversation with someone that something I said was misinterpreted on their end. And so it was like, for me, where I wanted to go into immediate defense mode about like, listen, like, where's your accountability in what you're doing? Right. And in the resistance of them, I got to really see where the resistance within me was too. And so that was really fascinating for me, because the more we start to go through that healing journey and understand what that means to us and how we process and how we move and how we meditate and how we heal, we expand ourselves in this awareness where it's like, oh, I can finally see all these moving parts. I understand what synchronicities mean and interconnectedness means and oneness means and downloads mean, because it's like those epiphany moments, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, aha, I get it. I see all of those spider webs connecting the things. Okay, I get it now.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
But I love your transparency in that, because it is this ever evolving thing, and it's not about being perfect. It's about having the grace, like you said, as you go through the process and as you evolve, right?
Mhm.
And that's something that I feel that is equally overlooked in the beginning, is that there's this projection of, it's like, it's so perfect and rainbows over here, and so people go through it not already feeling perfect, but then comparing themselves to what perfection looks like in someone
Mhm.
else's life. That's also, like you said, not being shown on the background side, right? So
Right.
it's like this really intricate experience, that I hope, if anyone's listening at this point, you're not getting scared away from healing. Like, it's a
Right.
really beautiful thing, because when you continue to, really, it's just in the continuation of just keep going. Just keep going, keep assessing, keep making decisions. You're going to have trust and confidence in yourself the more that you take those steps to show that you are trustworthy and can have confidence in what you do.
Yes.
But I'm really curious to know from you, what is something, now that you're in this space of more expanded consciousness, what are those maybe not so realistic things that you are just so enthralled with? Like, for me, it was star seeds and light beings and aliens. I've always really loved aliens. So then when I became more expanded in consciousness, I was like, oh, this just fuels this. And now I know that it fuels. So but what is that thing for
Yes.
you where you're like, just can't get enough of it?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. Okay, so I have this very analytical, logical thinking brain. I want to know how things work on like a very minute level. And I've always been like that. I research and I study and I read, and I've been like that since I was a kid.
Mm,
So now my interest really falls at the intersection of spirituality and science.
mm.
I have really been diving deep into some of the works of David Wilcock. I don't know if you've read any of his books, but they are amazing. Right now I'm reading The Synchronicity Key. And yeah, write that
Gonna
down.
write it down.
But it's fascinating because he comes from a point of very like data driven scientific evidence of all of the more esoteric things that people talk about. So not only is he in the realm of actually being open-minded and believing, in star seeds, in synchronicities, in energetic cycles that we go through just as a planet and as people, but also he has the data and the research to back it up and to prove
Mm,
his points, which I think is amazing. So that intersection has been fascinating for me. And I've really started getting into the quantum. And when I say that, I mean more on the level of quantum physics as a science.
yep.
Because I am just so fascinated in the actual proof of what energy is capable of doing.
Yep.
And it has been proven. If you look at the research and at the studies that have been done around around energy and meditation and the heart space and the power that we have just in this body to be able to manipulate energy and transfer energy between people is just absolutely incredible that we are able to do this. And there is ways to measure that and to prove it.
Yeah.
And so I read a lot about that sort of stuff. I watch all the documentaries, I'm fascinated by that. But also, I don't know if you know this, I live in Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes. So,
no way.
yeah. So my family moved here when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And, the alien thing is obviously huge here as a tourist attraction, but it really is so fascinating. Like the idea of extraterrestrials and them actually being able to visit our planet and interact with us. And being here, like, our McDonald's looks like a spaceship and there's like aliens everywhere you go in town. So it's really everywhere. But
that is so freaking cool.
It's so funny. I mean, and every summer they do like the International UFO Festivals here, which thousands of people show up for this and they are all dressed up in their costumes. And it's just so fun. But, but really getting into like Stephen Greer's work and
yes,
the stuff he does with the CE5 and contacting with using groups of people in meditation to contact extraterrestrials and actually communicate with them is just unbelievable. And I think it's so amazing. But also getting into star seeds, that's something that I've really been diving into a lot lately as I realized that I am a star seed. And that's been kind of a new revelation, over this year of spiritual awakening that I've had, is that, my soul is very old.
Yeah.
And I have lived many, many, many lives. I don't even know how many at this point, in other galaxies and star systems and other incarnations on Earth. And the complexity that brings to defining yourself as a soul is really kind of mind-blowing. That, just the idea of thinking that I could be from somewhere else, like out in the stars, and I'm not the only one. There's lots of us here, at this time on the Earth, especially. So I've been really going deep into a lot of cosmic research, and a lot of quantum, and a lot of science.
I love that so much. And I agree. That was one of the things when I started to do more of the teaching stuff, where I was like, hey, if I'm going to teach this, I need to understand factually how this works. And quantum physics was one of those things where I was like, the day I thought I would be walking around telling people that I understand quantum physics to like even a small degree is wild to me. Right. But it's so true, because energy is such a beautiful, powerful thing that is so dynamic. But if you don't understand the fundamentals of how it actually works, you're really doing yourself a disservice, either from the perspective of the person healing, but ultimately I feel like as the teacher teaching, because you can't help the client then equally articulate why that chakra connects with that organ, why that disturbance in your field is causing heart palpitations, and so on and so forth. And so it's really interesting when you get into that stuff. And so for me, it was Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's the one who teaches me all the stuff about the body and autonomy and the connection of the quantum energy. But I'll definitely be checking out David Wilcox, because I love that. And then equally, all of these now undercover CIA agents who are in all these top secret, even psychic programs, right? So I can't remember what his name is. I think it's Robert. I'll quote him in the show notes. But there's this one agent. Well, he's no longer an agent, but from the age of 3, he was put into these science camps that were actually just camps for children to teach them expanded consciousness. And so he then ended up going into all of these different space missions to Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, and meeting with all these other interdimensional beings, and equally had his memory erased. So some of it being past lives and some very much being this life, and one where he remembers having his consciousness transferred from one body to another in past life regressions. And so for me, like when I hear these stories and I listen to these people who are not only in these like top level organizations that you can't not be, you can't not understand the dynamic of all of it when you're a part of it. Right. So it goes beyond just this like intangible, airy fairy, oh, that's a nice idea kind of thing, because there's so many components to it that these people are equally coming out to talk about. And that's actually a huge part of this whole disclosure movement. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, the raise in consciousness awareness is the disclosure movement. That is the overarching theme of what is transpiring, right? People are like, oh, it's the virus, it's a shot, it's BLM, it's this. It's like, no, it's the disclosure movement.
So much
You're
bigger.
being triggered. So you step back and you start questioning and go through the healing so you can see the overarching disclosure movement, because it is a bridge to an expanded consciousness in humanity. And what's really fascinating about these people's stories, I assume you watch Gaia.
Oh yeah.
What's so fascinating about these people's stories is the truth behind it, because there are people who go through healing journeys who start downloading, painting, channeling information from star systems and beings and energies that they're like, did I just dream? Where did this come from? I've never seen this before. I don't know what this means. And then there's these, no longer sealed agents who are like, hey, I went to this place and I saw this person and they looked like this and they did this thing. And then these people are like, I saw that. That's literally what I painted. Like, what's going on?
Yes. I was actually just having this discussion the other day, because I I've been going very deep in these meditations where I feel that I am actually astral traveling to other places in some cases. And in one of these experiences, I could see myself, and I was blue and I had very large eyes, and I was wearing this robe that was white with a gold trim. It was very specific what I was seeing. And afterwards, I started doing some research on what I thought I saw, and I found a picture of exactly what I looked like and what I was wearing. And I was like, okay, so this has to be real because somebody else has seen it and they drew it. I mean, it has to be, right? And I had another experience where I astral traveled to a place where I had a very specific vision of what this city looked like, including this big fountain that was in the center of it. And later came across a picture that somebody had painted down to the fountain was exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's my validation. Like somebody else has been there, somebody else has seen it. And I am definitely not making this up. You know, this is definitely an experience that I'm really having, because when you're in it, you know, you do feel sort of like you're making it up.
Yeah,
it feels like your imagination's running wild, even though it feels real to you. You try to explain it to somebody else, and it's like, but it was real, I swear, you know, but you do in the back of your mind, you're like, but was I making it up? Like, I don't know. So having that validation of like seeing other people's artwork, or having, you know, talking to people like you or other psychics who can validate, like, you know, you're not crazy. This is really something that I see in you, and they mirror that back to you. And it's like, it kind of brings it all together in a way that's like, okay, I can calm down a little bit. I'm not losing my mind. This is actually something that I can ground into my body and hold on to as my truth, and lean into it a little bit more instead of pulling back because I'm afraid of what I'm now experiencing.
Yeah, that actually, it's so funny that you say that, because that was one of those things that really turned the pages for me when I was going through just like wanting to heal and learning about intuition and mediumship. Like I had no intention of sharing with other people. At this point, I was literally just learning it for myself. And I went and did this meditation that I had found on, I think it was even just Insight Timer. And it was a Journey to Atlantis. And so I'm like, okay, well, I love all things Hawaii and Lumeria and Atlantis and mermaids. So like I'm in, and I sit down, and it was 18 minutes long. And I remember, I don't even remember sitting there doing the meditation. It was like immediately I was activated and taken somewhere else. And I started to go through these like white portals of light, and then I'd end up somewhere. And the first one, I came out of this like portal of light, and I ended up on the ground, and it was kind of like a desert. And there was these like different looking beings that I couldn't really make out or articulate what they actually looked like, but I knew that they were tall, and there wasn't really much around. And I somehow knew that I was in the wrong place. So I went back into this portal of light, and in the portal of light, there was kind of like this dolphin looking human mermaid thing. I don't even know how to describe it, that showed up to take me somewhere. And I dropped down. I was already in the ocean in this portal, and I come into this opening between these rocks, and there's this what looks like kind of like a ruins of a coliseum, and there's this like town up on this underwater hill, and a castle at the top. And as I get brought down through the city, there's all these like mermaid human beings. And they're applauding me. It was like, for the first time, I had like come home, like they were waiting for me to come home. Was the overall feeling. And I remember swimming through this tunnel and through this town. And I get to this place, and this man, he like greets me, and he says, "You're home." And I come out of this meditation, and I'm fucking bawling. I'm like, what is going on?
Oh, yes.
Going crazy. Why am I crying? What just happened? Where did I go? I'm making this up. I can't do this anymore. This is fucking weird. Like, how do I come out of this room and tell my husband what just happened? He's gonna like, okay, it's time to go for a drive there. And within 2 days, I was scrolling on Instagram, and I wasn't even following this person. And she was advertising a course in training to connect with Lumeria. I love all things Lemuria. So I click on it and it opens up this picture, and it was the exact picture of what I saw swimming into, with the ruined Colosseum in the middle and the town and the castle up on the hill, and these little figures standing along the pathway to go up to this castle. And I couldn't move. I was frozen.
Right?
I
Yeah.
look over at my husband with my mouth like, and he's like, what just happened? And I couldn't even say anything. I was like, I'm either fucking absolutely nuts, or
Yeah.
there is something happening here that I can't explain, and I need to know what is going on. Like, I need to know right now, because if this comes up in a conversation, I better be able to explain this.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I had an experience in one of these meditations where I was greeted by a Lyran being who I call Thomas. That was the name that I got for him. But this beautiful, like lion looking being who embraced me. And it was like, I felt like I was being welcomed home, and same, I was just crying. I mean, I've had so many like good cries in my meditations from these experiences where my soul is just like, yay, you're remembering. And I'm so overwhelmed and like emotional. But then, I walk out of my room and it's like, okay, I can't tell anybody about this.
It's like, wait, how am I supposed to function in society and go get a Starbucks now after this? Like, where am I?
I know. And actually, you helped me with that. I had asked you, like, how do I ground myself into my human experience while I'm also experiencing all of these other really incredible things? Because it's so tempting to want to get lost in that world because it's so new and beautiful and exciting, and it feels so good. And like you had reminded me, like, just start understanding that you get to have this human experience. You get to do the dishes. You get to walk your dog. You get to do these things that you essentially, as a starseed, came here to experience being human. So remembering like the beauty of just being human is also an incredible experience. That is the whole reason you're here.
Yeah. It'll be the life you look back on and you're like, oh man, there's so many things I could have done differently.
Right? I know.
Like, now that I'm this light body again, like, that was hard. Okay, let's go back. Let's forget all over again and try and do that differently, which is ultimately what happens when we incarnate as a human being. We are acknowledged as one of the most diverse species because of our free will of choice and the way that we can move and grow and expand and shift and change in the ways that we can as a human. That it, to me, is like a whole new level of learning and fascination, because I'm like, if they're thinking we're fascinating and also very destructive, and I can see that, what does that then mean to be a human? Because when, like you said, when you do develop, it is so fascinating and beautiful and exciting and new, and and people do get so easily lost in it, because it's like, and that's actually why I feel like the metaverse is not only a really terrible thing, but also going to be such a popular thing because of that, that illusion of expansion, that you can go into this alternate universe and reality and be and do what you want. But it's, in some cases likely not going to be anything like who you are as a person. And then you miss out on that entire experience. And so where is I going with this? Being a human. Oh, the fascination of being a human. So then it makes me think, okay, well, if we're being studied from all these other spaces and dimensions and realms and planets, okay, what does it mean to be a human? What am I capable of? What can I do? Wow, they don't do the dishes. Most of them don't even eat food. Like, what does that mean? It's like, okay, well, let's slow down and enjoy some of this a little bit more then, because this is going to be something you look back on, in your all of oneness and remembering, and be like, oh, I really overlooked that piece of it.
Yeah. So. And that's something I've really been trying to focus on lately, is just and this is another one of those like woo-woo buzzwords, is presence, being in the present moment and what that really means. Because I am so heady. Like, I'm always thinking about all these, like, my mind is always somewhere else. And so the practice of being in my body and absorbing what is happening right now and enjoying it has been something I've really been finding a lot of pleasure in lately. Of just like, okay, I'm drinking this coffee and it tastes like this and it smells like this, and just really getting into all the senses of experience that is your human life. It's like this beautiful sunset and the temperature of the air and the people around you. It's very beautiful, and it's messy and it's complex, and there's so much depth to being a human, that I think that once you kind of get off into these exoteric ideas, you kind of forget that being human really is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I could literally jam on this like all day long. Me and Phil, we've been, one of our like rules at night is if we're going to watch TV, it's either funny or it's like enlightening. So Gaia basically. And, we've just been binging Gaia at night, and it's so, there was points where here's where the story's going. I can't get stoned and watch Gaia because then I have visits and that trips me out, but I can watch it sober and enjoy it and take it all in and process it. But it's actually a really fascinating thing, because when we first found Gaia, I don't normally smoke. I actually don't really smoke at all anymore, but on and off I would. Phil used to use it for pain management. And so sometimes I'd smoke with him, and to no judgment if anyone does smoke, like it's fun.
Right.
As long as it's not a problem, it's a great thing. But I was finding that when I would smoke weed and I would watch Gaia, that I would go into these alternate states of reality where I was 100% out of my body. So not only the vibrational frequency of what's being emitted from that series or documentary or that talk, but then also being in a super heightened state of experience from marijuana, and then infusing that. There was one point where we were watching a documentary from, I can never remember the guy's name. He has like short brown hair, and he always stands in what seems like I don't know if it's always like this, but I always see him standing behind what looks like a big circle, a bunch of circles. And he's on this very bright stage, and he's talking about all his past lives. He recalls every single moment, experience of all his past lives. It's so trippy to watch even sober, but I decided this was the one I was going to watch stone. And it was like this, when you see like someone shooting out energy. So it's like circles of like energy that's just like growing and growing. That's kind of how it felt. And then I remember at one point I was so out of my body that I tripped out, and I was like, I have never experienced this from smoking weed. First of all, like what is going on? Secondly, I had to I freaked out, shut it off. Phil was watching it. I was like, I'm shutting this off right now, like mad. He's like, what just happened? What's going on? I was like, I don't fucking know, but I need to go to sleep. And I laid down and I was paralyzed. And these 3 little aliens came in my room. They weren't much higher than the bed, and they were gray. And they weren't there to do anything, but I was in such a higher state of awareness, and I had attracted a certain frequency that they were available to come and see me. And I went into this paralysis, and I remember screaming in my head, like those dreams that you have where you're in a dream and you want to get out, but you can't say anything. Like this was me in real life. And I'm staring at the dresser, laying on the bed, frozen, screaming, Phil, fucking hell, no!
Oh my gosh.
What's going on? And these 3 little aliens come in my room, and they just stand there and they look at me and they're curious, and they can tell that I'm clearly panicked. And so they leave, and I unfreeze, and I sit up out of the bed, and I'm like, did you just see what happened? And I'm like hysterical.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, Phil flies out, and he's like, what's going on? This whole production. And I was like, did you not see that? What just happened? This is what just happened. This is what's going on. Tell me, explain it. What the fuck? I start bawling. He's like, you are not smoking weed and watching Gaia ever again. And I was valid. That's valid.
Yeah.
But now,
that's hilarious.
Having watched so much of it sober, I'm like, I think I'm ready for that experience again. I don't think I'll panic as much this time.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's funny because I worked in that industry for a while. I worked on a farm where I helped with like the cultivation and the growing and all of that, and then ended up working in a dispensary where I was the manager, helping people try to navigate those experiences, which was a whole other thing. So you get these people who are now like in their 60s who maybe have never smoked weed in their life, but their doctor says you should go do this because it'll be good for you, but don't explain to them like how this works or why it works. And, they come into a dispensary and I'm having to explain to them, how much to smoke and how you actually smoke it and what are the effects. And if you smoke too much, don't panic, this is what you do. And watching these people who are now, their whole lives have been so against it because that was the propaganda that they believed, who are now experiencing this, in some cases, psychedelic experiences. And they'll come back afterwards and be like, this is what happened and tell me all about it. And I'm like, this is great. Good for you for finally like stepping into something that made you really uncomfortable. And now you've opened up your mind and you're having all these new experiences at this late stage in your life. This is amazing.
That's hilarious. I couldn't even imagine. That would be so funny.
It is. It really was a trip.
That's like, I have a client who works at these safe injection sites. And so she deals with all the people who are on all the things. And we were having a conversation about the conversations that she has. And she's like, it's out of this world. Like these people are on different planets. And I'm like, I could only imagine. Because when you raise your consciousness to that type of a degree, you only see and process energy because your your spirit can't hold space in the body because it's high. It's so much higher than even the density or the pain or whatever kept you to fuel that addiction to begin with. But now you're so high, you pull yourself out of your body. So you only see and experience energy, and there is this, the psychiatric component of it. Right. But at the same time, you can't necessarily discredit what they're seeing because there's also equally studies that prove that in a sober meditative state that you can experience that too. They're just getting there a lot faster. So it's really it's interesting because there's so many complexities to the world and what we're told and taught and what it is and what we don't know it is, that it's like the healing journey starts with what seems like, okay, I'm going to heal my abusive relationship tendencies, or I'm going to heal my, poverty experiences, or I'm going to heal this disease or illness in the body. And then it raises into this place where it's like, oh man, I was stuck on that for that long. Damn. Well, look what is over here. It's like a jungle gym now.
Yeah, definitely. And I've, honestly, there was a period of time where I was smoking quite a bit of weed. And it was mostly to kind of numb out a lot of the intense emotional experience that I was having. It was like, I am an empath and I'm very sensitive. So it's like, I'm constantly feeling all the things. And before I understood why that was happening and how to manage my energy and how to protect my energy, I was constantly in a state of overwhelm of just like everybody's emotions were in my field all the time. And so, smoking weed was a great way to kind of like numb out from that and just push it all away. So I didn't have to feel all the things all the time. And now it's funny because when I don't smoke as often anymore, but when I do, and I do sometimes before I go into meditation, and I do that intentionally because I know that I can get to such a higher level of, meditation. I mean, just a higher state, excuse the pun of like being high, but it is literally like a higher state, in my meditation where I am like on another planet sometimes, and I think it sometimes gives me that little bit of push to be able to just let go. So I'm not holding myself back. It releases some of those limitations so that I can allow my mind to travel in that way. It just kind of relaxes you, so you can get out of yourself and get out of your own way. It can be a really powerful tool, to explore that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things that as long as you aren't using it in an addictive way, it is, like you said, such a beautiful tool and is often used in any form of herbal medicinal forms of healing, right? There's so many different shamans who use marijuana as a tool for expanded consciousness, because that's ultimately what it does anyways. It expands you into consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's really so fascinating how I think ultimately just how people are, how we are, how we operate, what we're told, what we do, the way that we move throughout our lives, the limitations and the expectations we put on ourselves and others. And ultimately, when you choose to heal whatever you are challenged by, from a place of how can I do better versus how can I change my environment? Because you can't change your environment if you don't change you. You're the attractor of that experience. But when you start to have those questions and you start to do that work and you start to allow yourself the grace to move through it, and equally the grace of then healing the feeling of needing to catch up.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one. You're like, how did I miss all of this? Oh my gosh, I'm 20, 30, 40, 50 years behind. Like, what?
Yes.
It's like, it's okay. You were supposed to do it that way. So that means that there's so much more for you to do, which is so cool. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing for me is what I just continuously find fascinating is people, human beings.
Yeah.
It's like, I understand why we're studied in that perspective, because we are so intricate and complicated. Whereas like, there's good and bad to everything and every being, no matter who or what you are or where you come from. But it's like, there's so much more of either the simplicity of being rooted in love or the simplicity of being rooted in dark. Whereas human beings, we carry so much of that multifaceted, intrinsic, like divide and disconnect and connection and all the things in one spot at one time. And it's like, what?
Right. Yeah. And that allows me also to give other people so much grace, because I know how complicated I am and how complex I am. And, whenever somebody does something that triggers you and you want to immediately judge them, you have to give them the same grace you have to give yourself. It's like, they're human. They are extremely complicated. They have had this whole series of experiences in their life that have led them to the point where they did that thing that triggered you. That makes it so much deeper than just the thing that they did. It's their beliefs, it's their limitations, it's their traumas, it's their programming, it's all the things that they are that now you've experienced and you don't like it. So it's like, and then you have to realize also that they're mirroring back to you something that you needed to see. So as complex as we are as individuals, our interaction with each other adds a whole other layer of complexity to being human. These are the things that I think about sometimes. And
Same.
I'm like, wow,
where did my mind just go?
Yeah. I'm like, and when you get into that space where you can see things from that perspective though, and really be the observer of what's going on instead of getting lost in all the emotion of it, it really helps you to learn so much about yourself and about other people, because you can reflect rather than just getting upset. You can take that time to be like, okay, well, this is why I felt this way. This is what they did. And, this is how I'm going to navigate the rest of this situation. And it may have nothing to do with dealing with them. It could all be an internal resolution for yourself. And ultimately, I think that's kind of what we all have to do, is because you can't control another person. Everything has to be resolved within yourself. You can't depend on somebody else to reflect back to you the things you want to see. It's just, it just can go so deep with the way that we relate to each other. It really, it blows my mind constantly. And the further I get along this path where I'm having all of these deeper realizations about the reality of what's going on and not just my experience of it, my mind continues to be blown over and over and over again.
It's and then cycles us right back to the importance of inner child healing. It's like, you go down that path where no matter how far you go out and essentially up, right, it always is going to bring you back to, okay, where within me do I get to be responsible for what's coming through? Because we have that responsibility as a person. We so quickly want to, and though I'm blanketing this as a generalized statement, but we so quickly as humans want to go out and change other people in the environment. It's like, this problem exists because of this, so we're going to go and protest it. And we're going to go do this. And we're going to go do that. And it's like, but that's great. And I'm not discrediting the power of that. But what are you doing within yourself, because you're either going to then bring that wounded energy to that protest, or you're going to create some sort of call to action or bring some kind of powerful movement that's not a space held with people just like rallying and fighting and burning things in the street. Like,
Yeah.
so it's interesting, our world today, because it's the unwilling who we see then the physical wounded behaviors that are enacted on, and then there's those who are willing to look at themselves in even the most uncomfortable of situations and say, okay, where can I improve, versus reacting to needing to now change the external side of everything. So
yeah. And that's really become a big part of what I want my messaging to portray to people, is just the idea, or not even the idea, but actually taking responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Take responsibility for yourself, understand the power that you have to control your mind, your thoughts, your body, and also the power that you have to be your own healer.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's this message in a lot of the coaching industry right now that you need me to fix you. And it really bothers me, because I've just been dipping my toe into this coaching world, where now I hear the word coach and I'm almost repelled by it. Because it's like, I see all these coaches that are not acting in integrity with how they're giving their messaging to people who are really looking to them for guidance. And they're creating this culture that relies on them to continue to fix people. When really my message to people is, learn how to fix yourself, and not that you need to be fixed, but learn how to heal yourself, because it's so much more fulfilling when you feel it coming from within yourself than somebody telling you, like, this is what you need to do, go do the thing. And you're like, okay, I did the thing. Now I'm fine. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm really seeing like self-responsibility is something that I think a lot of our society is lacking. We want to blame and we want to be the victim, and we don't want to look within ourselves to see that like we are the root of everything that is in our life. And that's where the healing has to start.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. That was actually one of the biggest things for me. It wasn't the word coach, it was the word psychic. So like I branded and built myself on being a psychic medium. And then the more that I continued to look at what that title actually looks like and how the industry portrays it, I was like, I don't like this, because it insinuates that you're going to someone who knows more about yourself than you do. And I couldn't stand for that anymore. And I mean, arguably intuitive even insinuates the same thing. So that's why for me, when I started looking at how I was doing things, and I realized very quickly the importance of not being the one standing on the podium, if you will, and I needed to teach people how to be on that podium with me, the importance of that, because it is something where good and bad and everything, right? But because the energy industry and coaching industry is so unregulated, like I did a live the other day. I said, anyone can go buy a $30 deck of cards from the store and show up online and start doing readings. Right. And the accuracy of them might be 100%, but it's like, but now you're inflating an ego. Right. So it's like, where are you then accountable to the work you're doing and how you're actually helping people versus just making money? And there's nothing wrong with making money. It's just your intentions behind it is where I'm like, let's question that for yourself, and then get in alignment with what your principles and values are that you stand on, because that's going to be the foundation of your growth, especially if you want an actual reliable and sustainable business in this space. Right. So it's something that I'm excited. Like there are people like you and I in this industry, and others even just coming into it or coming up in it, where they're seeing these ways of improvement. I don't want to call them flaws. There's spaces of improvement, right? That's how you become successful, is you step back to look at the gaps so that you can see where you can fill them. And sometimes that requires more education and another year of practice to be able to execute that accordingly. But it's like, but the time in which that happens is irrelevant, because you're on a path and journey that's happening on divine timing anyways. So it's like when we show up with the work in this world where we're teaching people that it's simpler than it seems. It can be hard, but here's the tools of how to process. I want to support you in not needing me in the future, right? That's like my whole premise for all my coaching is you come into this contract with me and I teach you the tools, because you're not meant to rely on me and I don't want you to either. So if you are, then there's an issue with something that I get to look at, but also where my coaching might not be equally for you. And then that comes into, maybe you do need a therapist, right? And so that's where I get to define and understand the scope of my work, right? Because when there's the codependency and the reliancy, and there's someone not actually taking the action on it, well, my work as a coach is to empower you forward, not to support you in the trauma of what you have gone through, right? That's your accountability. And equally, I'm not licensed to do that. So, okay, here's the outline of my work, right?
Yes,
and I,
yes.
coaches and psychics, right? Or intuitive teachers or spiritual teachers, a lot of them don't take the time to look at that. And that's why I teach it, because I realized I didn't have that. It was something that I saw missing in some of my teachers and mentors and people that I were following in programs that I was in. And I was like, but what are you doing to not make people rely on you? And that's a really important thing, because if you're not helping your client ultimately at the end of the day know how to heal themselves beyond the session or the work that you do. Now, obviously healing, sometimes it does require longer term.
Oh yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Of course. But also being able to articulate, what they can expect. You go into a 60-90 minute session with someone, you're not going to heal the abuse of your dad from your childhood in that time. Absolutely not. And as a spiritual teacher, just because it might be less or more affordable, I might not be qualified to be able to support you with that either. So the onus is on the teacher, and how they're navigating that experience. So I really love your approach and your principles to the work that you're doing, and how you're infusing learning into what you're bringing into this world, because it's so valuable. And not even arguably, it just is so needed at this time and in so many ways. So it's always so wonderful to see other people who are doing that healing work for themselves and rising up and following that calling ultimately at the end of the day. And whether it's established and understood it to be that soul mission, or whether it's something to then you learn to articulate and understand as what that soul mission looks like on a bigger scale later. It's that's why we come here to earth.
Yes.
To learn that, to do that, to activate that, to act on that, and to just continue the repetitive cycle and maybe other planets.
Right. Yeah, no, I could not agree more. And one of the things with inner child healing, I see so many people who are teaching this. And as I started getting interested in teaching other people this, the one thing that I needed to stop and reflect on is am I qualified to do that for somebody else? I was fortunate enough that while I did experience trauma in childhood, this wasn't something that was the big traumas that you hear, the people experience, sexual abuse, things like that, neglect. So it was something that I luckily had a therapist help me navigate, but I could have done on my own. But then you get people who have experienced those very serious traumas. And the one thing that I don't want to do in my work is re-traumatize them.
Yes.
Or not be able to properly hold space for somebody who is having a very serious reaction to revisiting these events in their past. That's something that I am surely not qualified to do, because I am not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. And I do see so many coaches who are just I guess not acknowledging that in their practices and in their businesses, is that they are not a trained mental health professional. They are not trained to hold space for serious traumas. That is something that's better left up to people who have spent years and years understanding how to do that. So with my particular business, there is a line that I have to draw with saying, I can help you with this and this and this, and what I understand from this process, but I cannot help you through a very serious, deep trauma. Therefore, I might not be the mentor for you.
Yeah, same, ditto. It's actually a really empowering experience to have, I've come to find, because there have been people that have reached out to me, or some that have even, I had one woman who joined my program who had a history of addiction and abuse and trauma and all the things for 30 some years of her life. And it led to me having to refund her, and by my choice, because I was like, I don't feel like this is actually going to help you. And I think that this might actually harm you. And I was willing to sit in, oh shit, that's, this amount over these months that I get to come in to say your well-being is more important than the money in my bank account. Yes. And that's something that teachers, coaches, healers, they come into this environment not understanding because they've never had to do that before. But when you are in integrity to yourself and your genuine goal is to help people, then it doesn't matter about the money anyways, because
Hmm.
you understand that the byproduct of that communication, of that boundary that you set, is going to only lead you to bigger, better, more um, uh, abundant, there's the word,
Hmm.
experiences anyways. And it's uncomfortable as shit to say that, to have those conversations, to even, make those decisions. But it is really empowering because then you get to find a deeper level of confidence and strength within yourself. And it's like, okay, I really see the importance in this. And that's something that I continue to show up and just educate people on, because it's, if we're not going to do it and hold ourselves accountable to it, or equally peer to peer, then we are running around rampant, which we can
Yeah,
because it's an unregulated industry.
exactly.
But then, like you said, you can re traumatize people. And that's something that a
Hmm.
lot of people are not qualified to do, or not qualified to take on and support with. And that's something that I personally would never be okay to sit with doing to someone else. So,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because when I first started, entertaining the idea of going into inner child healing and helping women through this process, I really had to sit with it for a little while, because my first instinct was, okay, I can't do that because I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist. But after speaking to two or more, actually at this point, different therapists and psychologists about my ability to hold space for people in this way, and um, got their feedback of what they thought were the parameters of which I should work
mhm,
in. And I think that was very helpful, because I needed to know from a professional point of view of like, okay, where am I qualified to help these people?
yeah,
And where is there a line where I need to be referring people out to somebody else who has more qualifications than I have?
yeah,
And just wanting to come from a place of such integrity in doing
mhm,
that. And I've really appreciated that you've been talking about that, in your podcast and in a lot of your messaging of, this is not a regulated industry. You could really say and do whatever you want and nobody's going to stop you. And then you have these people who are in a position where they really want help. They really want to heal and they really want to improve their lives. So they're trusting you
yeah,
with their well-being. And that's a huge responsibility. It goes beyond just making money from this. It really is, you're holding space for this other person who is going through a self-development process
yeah.
where if you're not careful, you could cause them more harm in that process.
Yeah. I have watched, unfortunately, too many people be a victim to someone who is filling their bank account. And in some cases, they're not even aware that
Hmm.
this is the energy that they're coming from. But you know that they are, because their clients are ending up in mental breakdowns. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's where I talk about, vetting the people you work with. Have a conversation with them for a bit. Just because of this shiny object syndrome of, what this person is doing or has or can do or is promising, doesn't necessarily mean that it's intentional. What does your gut tell you? You don't have to be an intuitive master to know whether your
Yeah.
gut tells you that something's off. But then equally, that's where tools are required for you to be able to dissociate. Okay, but is this a fear of change? Am I associating change with pain? Or is there something with this person's energy? And that's why I teach people, even in a membership that's the same cost as Netflix a month, where I'm like, I want you to be able to swap out a bad habit, which
Hmm.
Netflix is a bad habit, with something that can help you, right? And be able to have that ability to discern for, and then when you go out in the world and you want to, be a part of a relationship, or you want to grow a family, or you want to get a better job, or you want to start something yourself, or whatever it is you want to do, you have the ability to discern the energy because you took the time to practice it and you understand it and you have tools, versus just
Yes.
like, oh shit, I don't know if this is my fear or if this is this person just like having a shitty energy. And it's like,
Hmm.
because people can have shitty energies, right? If they're not doing their own work. And,
Yeah.
what are their client testimonies like? And, go and follow some of those clients' pages and see what they're all about, right? What do they look like they're doing? Like, feel like genuinely feel it out. I would never let someone sign a contract with me coming into an agreement where they were feeling in lack. I would
Hmm.
give them tools or support or some kind of tangible plan to go and utilize that and to come back to me when they felt like they were ready to be in this space and empowered to do so. Doesn't mean that there's no fear associated with it, but they weren't coming from lack. And I think that's really important for people who are high or who are offering higher ticketed programs and coaching contracts. Is like, if your clients are coming in with fear, that is going to require you to do so much more work on the mindset stuff than anything else. And if you don't understand how to do the mindset stuff, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, and that person's not going to get the results that you're hoping to promise them. And not because you are doing this out of a bad intention, you're doing it out of a good intention. But then that comes back to the qualifications. What are those parameters of the work that you can do? How can you support them? And what are you doing? And so if I'm going to work with people who are willing to pay the money, it's like, okay, let's make sure you're empowered to do so first, because that's the most important thing. Then you will be committed to doing the work.
Yeah. And there were so many teachers that I was following kind of at the beginning of this journey that now I've stopped following them for those reasons. It's like their message was really impactful for me in the beginning. It kind of got me going, but the further down this path I went and the more I awakened myself, I started to see their energy in a different way. And I'm realizing, that wasn't no longer a healthy space for me to be in. And I had kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of evolved beyond their message.
Yeah.
But then I see so many people flocking to them as this like guru type person. And not to say that they are not impactful in helping people, but I see things from such a different perspective now than I did a year ago when I first started.
Yeah.
And it's really important, I think, that we have these conversations around integrity in this industry, because there's so many people talking about all the money and the 10K months. And that's the goal. Come be a coach. You can teach people whatever you want and make all this money.
Yeah.
And, while the money is great and all of that is wonderful, it really attracts a lot of people who haven't done the work themselves and just want to make a buck.
Yeah. And are desperate. They're in a desperate space.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I swear we could probably sit here for a few hours.
I think so. Yeah.
But I want to honor you and your time today. And I'm so grateful that you came and you shared your life, your stories, and your energy and your spirit with us. So thank you. Sara, I would love for you to share with everyone where they can find you, what work you have going on now or in the future that they can be aware of. How can they be a part of your world?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me on here. Let me talk to your people, your audience. This has been an amazing conversation. I really think that we could talk about this all day. I love these kind of conversations, really. So right now, I am just starting to get into the spiritual teaching space. So I'm creating my first program around inner child healing. This will be, I think, a 6-week program, which can be either self-led or there's an option to do one-on-one coaching with me. And that will be through Teachable. So my website is saraknorris.teachable.com, and that'll be up soon. I'm just putting the finishing touches on all of that. And I'm also just finishing up writing a book that is kind of a first step into getting to know your inner child. And it's a 30-day guided process where you're having journal prompts and activities just to help you to start to cultivate that relationship and understand who your inner child is. And so that will be available soon. There's a link on my website that'll be activated whenever that's ready to be sold. And on Instagram, I'm sarah.k.norris. And I've just kind of started really putting things out there on Instagram. I have this love-hate relationship with that platform right now.
Why?
Yeah, right. I know. I feel like I have so much I want to say, and I'm just constantly being muzzled on social media. Like my business is being held hostage by, it's like I can't grow if I say what I want to say. I could possibly be shut down, and I have definitely experienced shadow banning on that platform for saying some of the things that I believe.
Yep.
So I am learning how to be very intentional with what I want to say within those parameters, although that feels kind of suffocating for me as somebody who I'm not a rule follower. I don't like that. I don't like being put in a box or told that I can't say or think or do what I want to do. And that's how I feel being on those platforms. But unfortunately, that is the world that we live in right now, that that's where you cultivate your audience and you reach the people. So I just have to have faith that my message will reach the people who it's meant to reach, being shadow banned or not.
Beautiful. I will make sure to link all of those things in the show notes so that you guys can go and check her out. And I resonate with that 1,000%. That was the biggest red flag for me in the beginning, was when they started saying you have to do this, like even just with the mask. I was like, the second you tell me I have to do something, my immediate answer is no. And the likeliness that it will change is never. Because no, thank you. No. Yep. You say I have to, I say no, thank you.
Nope.
That's not going to lead in a good direction.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sara, for being on here today. You guys go check out her world. She has incredible things coming out for you. And I know that she's going to help you heal and find your truth and expand into your soul. Hey, before you go, I wanted to take a moment to just thank you so much for tuning in with me each and every week. If you weren't already aware, new episodes drop on Mondays. If you could please be so kind as to screenshot this episode, just tag me on Instagram at Rylee June with your biggest takeaway, or if you know someone who could really use the insight and guidance provided to you in this session today, I would love for you to go ahead and share this directly to them. I look forward to continuing to bring you insight, guidance, and self-mastery activation tools that you can implement into your life now to truly evolve and become the divine expander that you are. All right, I cannot wait to chat with you soon. And remember, don't forget to go and find the magic in today.